Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. It's another interview today, and today I chat with Nicole Richards. What an interesting story, and what I love about her story is that she had a really successful business and then decided to just close it all down. And I love when people have something successful and pivot or have that instinct to just change things. I just love these stories, and she talks about it. She has a really interesting perspective. I love having people on the show that have different thoughts and perspectives and ways of tapping into their intuition and their thought process. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I'm going to give her a little bio, and we, as usual, will jump right in. So Nicole Richards is an experienced entrepreneur, best-selling author, podcast host, and personal reinvention coach for high achievers. Her methodology with clients is based on a whole life approach, helping people discover their life's work by establishing meaningful connections in their business and relationships. Nicole had a successful 22-year career as an entrepreneur in the beauty and wedding industry. Her multi-six-figure business included a retail store and a team of 15 artists. After closing her studio and retiring her brushes, she uses her business expertise as a personal reinvention and human potential specialist to help others achieve fulfillment in their financial and spiritual journeys. Nicole lives near Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. Let's dive into the conversation. Okay, welcome to the show, Nicole. I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you today.
Thanks, Alana.
Yeah. And I want to just dive right into a bit of your background story because there's many layers to it, as I love. And we have some similarities as well. But why don't we just start with the beginning of your story?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. There's times in life where it goes in a direction you didn't think it was going to go in. And so many, many, many moons ago, I decided I was going to be a makeup artist, and I did that. Like, I hit that goal. I ended up with a team of 15 and a makeup studio in downtown Whitby. And I opened my studio a month before my son was born. So I was 8 months pregnant when I got those keys. We renovated, opened the studio, had a baby. Have never had mat leave in my life because that's the life of a business owner. I have 2 kids. And yeah, my kids, they grew up in my studio. And I come from a corporate background. I was an education executive for a major cosmetic company. And so that love for cosmetics and that love for business, I had a chance to really flourish all of that when I had my studio. I turned this tiny and cute little space into a 6-figure phenom. But life comes knocking sometimes, and things happen that you don't expect. And so unfortunately, my marriage was going in a direction I didn't expect. And so I started to burn out, because sometimes when life is changing, Alana, you start working harder instead of smarter.
Yes, I do.
Right. And so I wasn't working smarter. I was working harder. And one day I had a client, because I know you were in cosmetics in the past as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine this. I had a client in a chair. I had a hairstylist behind her. I was kind of in front of her, table behind me, and I was going back and forth from the table to the client. And we were both providing a service for her at the same time. And I remember reaching over to grab something. And as I reached over, Alana, I tipped over and I literally fell and hit the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And I popped back up really quickly, which is never a good idea because you can pass out. And I was fine. I was okay. My client and my hairstylist were a little bit shaken, like she just fell over. But I think that was the day that I realized I was not okay. And I was burning the candle at both ends with 2 small children, a marriage that was on the rocks, and a business that was growing by leaps and bounds. But I still kept going because that's what you do. And back then, hustle culture was a thing. It was real. And the idea that you can sleep when you're dead was real. And that's how I was living my life, burning the candle at both ends. But one day I remember having a client and I had the perfect client, perfect day. And I got into my car and I remember I had like a $200 tip in my hand. Fantastic clients. And it's kind of funny because tips were rare only because I started taking all my payments up front. Okay. So once you stop people from paying cash, I found that they would like tipping just, it just kind of wasn't something that they thought about, which is kind of, so it was what it was. But this day they had paid me $200 in a tip. And I remember thinking I should be so happy right now. And all I want to do is cry. Like I sat in my car and I was looking at the money and I'm like, I'm not happy right now. What is wrong? Because I have fulfilled all the things I wanted to do. And there was so much more to do, right? I was being published in magazines, but there was so many more ideas that I had for this business. And that feeling continued probably for like the next 6 months until I finally kind of had like almost a come to Jesus moment. And I felt like my life was changing. I was trying to hang on to it, but I felt like God was telling me to do something different, to step out of the boat and just to trust him and do something different. So, long story short, at the height of my Michael Jordan era, I decided to close my studio. And I kept trying to still do makeup because really I'm like, okay, I can close my studio and I can downgrade all of that, but I got to make money. This is how I make money. So I kept doing makeup. And in December 2019, I had a wedding on New Year's Eve. Again, fantastic clients, like lovely people. And then I left and went to my car so that I could leave. And Alana, I opened my door and it almost hit me in the face. Like it swung. It was like it was on a hinge and it swung back at me really quickly. And when I looked at my car, someone had hit my wheel well. So where the wheel well connected to the door, it was dented. So the car door it wouldn't open. And I stood there looking at it and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure God was telling me to close my business and stop doing makeup. And I took on this just, just one more thing.
Yeah. One more, just one more.
One more. And my $600 gig turned into $1,000 problem.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I hear you. I'm done. And that was that.
And that was that. And wow, what a transition moment. And I haven't heard a lot of your stories. So this is like, you can see I'm just sitting here riveted because everyone has those moments where they feel that they can't do it anymore. But most of us ignore it. We still ignore it. And you had gotten the signs, like that moment of falling over in your studio. Scary moment, but it's easy to keep going. And this sounds like a moment where you're like, okay, things are changing. I'm done.
Yeah. And so sometimes when you get like, that saying the writing's on the wall, like it's like right there in big flashing lights, stop, stop, stop. So do you remember what happened 3 months after December 2019?
Yes, I do. The world went crazy.
Right. So when I first got the message, the small and quiet, still voice that, hey, you need to change directions, that was in the middle of 2018. And weddings do take time to like go through them and get through the clients. So it took about a year and a half. And so in 2019, I got the message with big urgent lights to stop. And 3 months later, the whole world shut down.
Yeah.
And the whole wedding industry went up in smoke.
Right.
Because
It
we
really got
weren't,
hit.
we are Canadians. So our lockdowns were quite insane. And
Yes.
so people couldn't have events and we had to stop doing everything. And I remember crawling into bed like at noon one day and just getting into fetal position and just crying, like just because people lost everything. Some people closed their businesses and their restaurants and people had to give back deposits. And
Yeah.
I have a friend who had to give back $80,000 in deposits. I would have lost my shirt. And so these small nudges from God, and some people might call it a small nudge from the universe. It's really important that we hear those nudges, feel those little taps on our shoulder because we really don't know what we're being saved from.
And so how did you actually, like, how are you getting these nudges? Like, is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it like for everyone, it's different. And I really want to know how you get those nudges and what makes you pay attention to them.
So everyone hears from God differently. Some people go out into nature and they'll get some sort of thought or a nudge. Some people listen to music and it comes that way. For me, it was like I can't even say it was a loud voice, and I don't want people to think that I'm absolutely crazy. But
Yeah.
uh, it was more of like a feeling, like an intense feeling, and I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure it did come from within me, that voice. But it was like a thought or a feeling that I knew wasn't mine because I was going this way, right? As business owners, we are visionaries. We are driven. When we go on a path, we know that that's where we want to go. And all of a sudden I was really feeling this energy, this gut feeling that I shouldn't go down that road anymore. And I just like a fly, I just swatted that
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, like swatting it away. I mean, that's what we do over and over and over again. Especially, I find entrepreneurs are so good at doing that because they're very resilient and they're very hardworking. And anyone who's deciding to build a business is like, they got grit, they have determination, right? They're going to keep going. But I also kind of hear things like I will hear words in my head that don't feel like they're coming from me when I'm getting like some kind of message or direction to change. It can be the gut reaction as well. And over time, I've learned, and maybe you have too, to discern what is just my own fear and anxieties perking up and what is something else that I can't really explain, but is usually trying to guide me in the right direction.
Right, right. And really, that other direction that you're being asked to go in isn't something that's easy. Like, I'm standing in this thing that I built, and it's like, you want close it down? What? Like, at that point, there were very, very few artists. People had hair salons, right? They didn't have makeup studios, and there were very few people that had a makeup studio. So, like, where was I going and why?
Yeah, I really want to like acknowledge how successful your business was and what you had built. And from what I have seen online, like so impressive. And you're exactly right. Not many people have built businesses like that. You just don't see a lot of larger scale makeup studios. You were independent, so you're obviously competing against the Sephoras of the world and all of that. And you built something incredible. And then to just kind of decide not to do it. I love this part of your story because there's so much courage that I'm hearing and seeing.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that necessarily was courage. I think like as we get older, we try to use wisdom. Um, and again, it didn't make any sense. But then when I saw what happened, I was like, oh, okay, now this actually totally makes sense. So the next time something like that happens, which I hope there's not too many next times, but the next time, that you're divinely being asked to pivot, it actually makes it easier because I did it the last time and I saw the outcome and it's like, oh, okay, this doesn't make sense, but I'm just going to pivot anyway. It's not my idea. That was my livelihood, right? And so I'm just going to go ahead and follow the nudging and see what happens next.
I love you that you use the word wisdom there, which comes from experience and comes from tapping into, who we really are, what we really want. Um, and but it also can take the wisdom or like the courage to tap into that wisdom and like let it kind of bubble to the surface. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
and you know what? I like the way that you say that. It can take the courage to let it like just play itself out because then like of course my family and friends were like, "What? What do you mean?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is so much about the pain of making a decision or changing direction is friends and family, what they're going to say, what they're going to actually just touch on that. What did the kind of people around you say when you're like, you know what, I'm, piecing out, I'm closing this business.
Oh, well, they were like, "What? What do you like?" I don't even know if I even have more of a story than just like
Yeah.
think of something that your family believes you should be doing because you have always done it, and now you're saying you're not going to do it anymore. And there was no COVID. Like I think people understand when they can see the reason, but there didn't seem to be a reason.
Yeah. It's just you're making a decision and they were not understanding it. So
Mhm.
then what were the next steps? What did that look like actually, closing down that business? And what did that next chapter start to look for you, like for you?
I wish I could say that I closed it and then all of a sudden everything was super clear. It was actually even muddier than before. But like I said, I closed it in 2018 and I continued doing weddings.
Hmm.
But as those weddings were wrapping up and I was coming to the end of 2019, I really thought about what I wanted to do next. And people were asking me to help them with their businesses. And just, I was having all of these conversations. I had a business coach at the time, and I loved talking about business in general. I loved talking to other people about the things that they wanted to build and their dreams. And so what came out of that was more of a coaching opportunity. And it's almost like putting on a jacket that fits, like that fit. Like it totally made sense as the next evolution of
Mm.
me, I guess.
So moving into the coaching space, how has that progressed for you? How has that evolved for you?
Mhm. So I have a passion project, Alana, and I have an obsession. So I'll explain both.
Great. Amazing.
So my passion project is an in-person summit for women in business, and also a podcast. And they have the same name. It's called Minding His Business. So I've been working on those two things for the last year. So the podcast will launch in January, and then the summit will take place in person in Hamilton in April 2025.
Exciting.
It's yeah, like it's well, so my obsession with that is that or my passion with that rather, is that I love having really deep conversations about like how we actually live out our faith while we're running our business and what that looks like. And so the podcast and the in-person summit kind of fills that gap of wanting to have really deep conversation for me. And then my obsession is working with my clients. And so I basically help people when they feel like they've lost their way on the journey in life, whether it's in business or it's in relationships. There's something that happens in midlife, and one day I'm going to write a book on on this. And it's almost like life itself is asking you to level up. But while it's asking you to level up, things around you can be crumbling and it doesn't look like an up level. It actually looks like a demise.
Yes, it looks like destruction or like everything imploding.
Yeah, everything imploding, but really it's just a change. It's a transition. And so the clients that I work with, they've seen their own success. They've done some really great things. But it's almost like I'm getting sent these clients that felt the way that I did in my car when I was holding that tip. And it's like, this used to fulfill me and now it doesn't. And what do I do
Yeah.
with any of this? So when people have kind of lost their dreams, I help them reignite their dreams on the way through life and help them refine the path that they've fallen off of.
And we need that so much right now. I'm just talking to so many people and they're feeling lost. They're feeling confused. I have had many moments of that, and I still feel like I'm in a state of exploration every day. And I think finding someone who you can have those conversations with, because it's not usually your close friends or family that are sometimes the best to talk to about that. I mean, they mean well, but to have that objective person, that objective coach who definitely wants you to succeed, but they don't really care how you succeed, right? It's like whatever path you are meant to be on, I'm going to help you get there. And that's what it sounds like you're doing for people.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes out of the work that I do with my clients is that they give themselves permission to make a change, to figure out what their meaning in life is. And when we talk to our friends and our family, like you said, they're well-meaning and they absolutely love us. Um, but when you and I work with our clients, it's not that we can't fall in love with them, but we don't know them, right? And so when we ask curious questions as a coach, we're getting to know them, but our curious questions help them know themselves. And so I love that dance. It's a beautiful opportunity for someone to say, "Oh, I can maybe go in this direction and not feel guilty. I can actually express myself this way and not worry if my family understands it or not."
Yeah. And what is with the permission piece? Because my podcast episode that just came out today is all about permission to leave a job when you want to, because that was something I saw as a career coach is people are so hesitant to give themselves permission to leave a job, or they don't think they can change jobs. It just and I'm seeing the permission piece just permeate everything in terms of wanting to make a change, but so scared to give ourselves permission to make a move and make the next step. What do you think that is all about?
So I was talking with a friend about this recently, and one of the things that clicks for me is that when we are, I'll tell you, well, let's go on a little bit of a meandering. So when we are young and we're in like senior kindergarten to, middle school, we're told what to do. We're always told what to do. And this is the path that we're going on, right? You got to get from this grade to that grade. And then we get into high school and it's the same thing. We have more self-management, but we're still told this is the road that we're going on. And that road is to college or university or the big job that you're going to get. Then you get to college, university, you're still kind of told, here's the road that you're going on. And then you get out of a college university and you've hit the pinnacle of the road. You're in the promised land, I hope, because you've just spent all that time and money getting a degree in something. And maybe people have landed the job that they wanted to. And so that's like the best outcome. But someone has always been directing and guiding this path, even though they might have made some choices. The world basically says you're going to go this way. This is how you should direct your life. Then we get out of school and we have 20 years that have passed by and you've hit the goal. And for some people, they may have the house and the car and the 2.5 kids and the yoga classes, like whatever, right? They've created this life and then they wake up one day and they're like, whose life is this?
Yeah.
And I love my family dearly, but is there something else that I'm supposed to be doing? Because there's nobody now guiding them. They have to guide themselves. But how do you get off the road and the path that you've been directed towards, like after 40 years?
You've just said it so well. It's that we're put into a system that just programs us to be guided in certain directions, and breaking free of that is really difficult. And even if we have the wisdom of being an adult and have that experience, there is just this internal pressure. And you're exactly right. It comes from that's the way we've grown up to assimilate and exist in a certain way and to stay the course. I know I really wanted to leave my design career pretty early. Like, so I was a graphic designer before I went into coaching, and I still do some creative work. I really wanted to leave that path pretty early on in my career, but I felt such an obligation to stay in that lane because I had spent all this money. I had done all the training. I was now a technical, I was somewhat accomplished. And I just was not able to give myself permission until I was much later in my career where I was like, I want to go into coaching. I want to try this, where I could give myself permission to deviate from that plan that I had. So I have not only experienced this, but I'm seeing it across the board with so many people. And the way that you've just explained that just really lands with me.
It's an interesting thing to think, and because a lot of people don't necessarily think in like energetic or spiritual terms, but there was a time when working at the same job was the right thing to do. That's what society needed from us in that moment. But there is an energetic shift, and people can feel it, and they don't know what it is or why it is, but they can actually feel that there's all of these changes. And so I work with my clients to help them lean into that, like whatever that is, like lean into it. We're not trying to implode your life. Like, I'm not saying you have to like stop working, ditch your family, move to Bali. Like,
yeah. Right. Yeah. People think it has to be extreme. It does not have to be extreme. I love that you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be all of that. And so one of the tiniest things a person can do to try to figure out what some of these feelings or these thoughts that they have is to find something that lights them up. We may not be able to figure out what your new job is going to be tomorrow, but what can you pour yourself into? Back in the olden days, they would call that having a hobby. Have you heard of that old word?
Yeah, I've heard about hobby and forgotten about hobbies, and hobbies need to make a serious comeback because we're just so distracted, partly because we have our phones, that I think we have ditched hobbies. Yes. Thank you for bringing up hobbies.
And people fill that time with like fitness and like there's different ways but fitness isn't a hobby. Fitness is something that we do to keep our body in shape and it keeps us mentally sharp. But what is a thing that you can do that lights you up, that causes you to think in a different way, and gives you the opportunity to just like be? So I'll tell you a little story, Alana. I homeschool my kids, and there was a day that they were driving me absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? Just this one, only this one day. And so we were supposed to visit a farm that we go to every Friday. And they said they were going to put people on an email list, and I didn't get whatever the memo was that they were sending. I didn't get it. So that day I told my kids, y'all are being crazy. We're not going. And then they were like, no, 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 we want to go to the farm. And so um, we were an hour late. We got to the farm. We were an hour late. And when I got there, my eyes were just like, what is happening? There was a man I'd never seen before. And Alana, you're Canadian. I'm Canadian. He had two rifles.
Oh my.
He was a sniper from what like a former military sniper. And I was just like,
At the farm?
at the farm.
Okay.
And he was teaching us how to shoot a rifle. Now I have a gun license. Okay. Just need to
Yeah. Okay.
say that. But I didn't get the memo. I was
Yeah.
like, right. And like I also had never actually shot a rifle, even though I have a gun license. That's just not how the licensing process actually works. And so he taught me what to do, and I couldn't listen to my kids freaking out, and I couldn't hear anybody else but him. He said, do this because we need to be safe, and do this so you can hit the target. And I had to take his instructions, and I pulled the trigger and missed. Okay. And then I did it again. I heard his instructions and I did it again. But my mind hasn't been that quiet in a really long time.
Yeah.
Okay. It was so like it just quieted down, and all I could hear was his instruction. And then all of a sudden, ping, I hit the target, and it was metal on metal. I was like, this, oh my gosh. And so then I hit the target again, and then my bum shoulder kind of kicked in, and I missed the last two. So, but I realized I have to do something that will quiet my mind. So the only thing that I can think about is doing this one thing. And that was a complete shift for me.
It's a game changer. Yeah.
Complete shift for me. Because like I said, we fill our time with exercising, and these are the ways that we have hobbies, play tennis. But when you can find something that will quiet your mind down, and so you can only think about that one thing, you will be so surprised how your imagination and your creativity will open up. You'll be so surprised how you will, like, it's almost like you've had a rest, but you haven't slept.
Yeah. Well, your brain's going into a different state, right? You're getting right out of beta, and you're probably getting even close to like you're definitely being maybe an alpha state or something like that, or even close to theta, where you have no choice but to focus. And that's when your body can decompress. And when you can decompress, that is absolutely when the creativity can kick in.
Right. And so I basically say to all my clients, you gotta find something that will put you in that state where you can't hear anything else, because if you do start thinking about something else, or you're listening to other voices, you just won't be able to do the thing, right? So that old fashioned word of finding a hobby is really important to us, like in this moment, because our hobbies have become our phone. Our phones have become the thing that takes up the space of something else we could be doing.
Yes, 1,000%. And it is like going back to the olden days. It's like, but I mean, there is a movement now to, people are wanting to grow their own vegetables. They're wanting to connect. They're wanting to, grow their own food and kind of be more in nature. And I think this really ties into it. It's like having a hobby is kind of getting back to, well, a more calm state, a more restful state, and kind of getting in touch with our true desires, what really lights us up. It's missing right now.
Yes. Yes.
So I
Yes.
love that you brought that up.
Yes. Yes. And there's other ways to figure out how we want to live our lives without upending our entire lives. It doesn't need, like you said, it doesn't need to be that dramatic.
Yeah. So now looking at your life now, what would you say you're like kind of most excited about? Like how your career is like not just career, but like the overarching picture. Like, do you look at it and go, wow, this is amazing what I've built? Or are you still feeling like, okay, I've got a ways to go?
You know what? I think I look at life and business a little bit differently now. I think one of the things that causes me great anxiety is the thought of building the kind of business I had before. because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to ramp up that way. And I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that I have peace and I have rest and then I have work. And so the way that I work now is completely different. So I'm very excited about kind of growing into like a different state of work, if that makes any sense, like making sure that the work that I'm doing is meaningful to me. It's meaningful to other people, that it helps other people, that I'm not overloading my schedule with which I'm still working on because
Yes.
that doesn't bring
Yes. Thank you. Me too.
I'm still
Yeah.
working on that part. But really discovering like how I want to work, like
Okay.
how does my brain work? How does my brain light up? What makes me get into those creative states of flow? And how can I stay there for a little while? But then how do I go out and have fun? Like what does fun actually look like? Which I have to say, like I'm still working on that whole hobby idea and having fun and making time for it. Um, but yeah, I would say that's what I'm excited about. Like really, it's a journey, Alana. Like I'm
Yeah.
never really gonna find like the perfect,
Yeah.
online, there's some people that got the perfect schedule.
Yeah, but I don't believe anybody. I literally don't believe anyone. Actually, I was at an event on the weekend, and someone who's starting kind of a new business, and she's in her 40s, and she looks at me and she's like, "But you've already got this figured out." I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, just because I've been doing my own business off and on for a long time doesn't mean I have anything figured out. I was just telling you, I definitely have some burnout going on before we hopped on our call. Yeah, no one has it really figured out. It is a journey to your point. But what I am like kind of hearing is that you've changed your perspective. You're really looking at what kind of life you want to build, which is a very simple question, really. Like, what kind of life do I want to build? But it completely changes how we make our decisions and what we decide to pursue.
Can you imagine being 80? Because when I was 30, I couldn't imagine being 48.
Yeah, yeah,
But I got to 48. Praise God, I'm here and you're here. And but one day, God willing, I'm going to be 80.
yeah.
And so I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I want my life to be like at 80? And some of these, like, schedule your day like this and do these things. And that's not going to get me to being like the woman that I want to be, the wise woman, the rested woman, the
Mm-hmm.
fun woman that I want to be at
Yeah.
80. Right. And so I've been thinking a lot about me and what do I want my life to be like, not with the influence of the influencers who are doing life in their way.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I work with my clients, I want to make sure that I'm not rubbing off my ideas of what their life at 80 should look like. And again, that goes back to those curious questions and those deep conversations and allowing them to think about life in a different way, like giving them that space, like sharing that space with them. And like beautiful things come up. They don't always have an answer because they've never thought about it before. We're so stuck in like what's happening today. But when you give someone the space to imagine, oh, my life could be this way, or I could have that at 80, or I could have that next year, it's so much fun. It's so much
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And I just want to note this one small thing I noticed on your website. And I was like, oh, she's definitely working on kind of building the life she wants. Cause you, like on the bottom of the website, you have your office hours like completely visible. It says like 10 to 5. I don't know if it was every day, but I was like, she's being very transparent about when she's available to work. And I was like, okay, we're clearly stepping away from workaholic. I'm going to work all day long, every single day life. That's the interpretation I got from it.
Yeah, but that I don't think that's like I want to say that's me like being so self-disciplined, but it's not.
Okay.
That's me being over 40 and understanding the time of life that I'm in and the energy that I have and not expending all of my energy. And realizing, okay, when it's time to work, I got to get down to work
Yeah.
because I know I'm going to run out of steam by X amount of hours. Um, and so I think that's actually given me more flexible and permission to not get into workaholic culture. Because
Yeah.
after a while, you're not actually doing good work.
No,
If you're
you're
not,
literally
yeah.
just spinning your wheels after a certain amount of, and everyone has hours that they're most productive in and all of that. So I'm sure
Mhm.
you help your clients with that as well. Okay, so I want to ask a question that I ask all of my guests on the show, which is in the spirit of ditching the struggle, what do you think is most important to commit to?
In ditching the struggle, giving yourself permission to dream. And like, what does that dreaming look like? And that can sound a little bit cheesy, like, come on, let's dream. But if you were going to think of yourself at 80 years old, right? What do you want that life to look like? Like, let's move beyond going on cruises and having retirement. And like, who do you want to help when you're 80?
Yeah.
Who do you want to mentor when you're 80? What do you want your life to actually represent when you're 80? And I find that pulls people out of today. And then we can ditch the struggle, because the more we think about what's happening today, the more anxiety we actually create for ourselves. But if I can think of my life plan as being another 32 years long, and I intend to live to 105, because that's what I tell my kids all the time.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah, I tell them I'm going to live to 105. But 80 would actually be another milestone.
Yeah.
Right. And so what do I want that to look like? At 105, I'm just going to chill out, party, and cruise. So
absolutely. If you're making it to 105. I really love that you use the word dream. And you know what's interesting is that I'm hearing a lot of people say, to use the word dream can be cheesy, or maybe it's not grounded, or I feel like we desperately need to get back to the dreaming piece, because that's the imagination. That's the part, like that's the childlike wonder in us that just gets squashed as we go along, right?
It does.
It's completely squashed. So if we can get back to that dreaming piece, oh man, I feel like we'd have a different world, but it's so hard for most people. And I think it's important that you brought that up again today.
Yeah, I think we get, we end up in midlife, and for some people, they have hit some of those dreams.
Yeah.
And for other people, their dreams have been squeezed out of them. Yeah. And it can be hard to see. It's almost like you're wearing cloudy glasses. It can be hard to
You can't see it. Yeah. And that's why I think working with a coach can be so helpful, because they will kind of give you that permission piece again, or they just help you tap into it. Because it's just like a skill that we just have let go, and we get so fixated on where we are now, and we can't even imagine where we could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine where we could be? Yeah.
Where you could be. It's incredible. I think you've, really, I definitely think you've used some courage there, along with your wisdom, to just like move along and make these big decisions and changes. And
it's messy, Alana.
It's messy. So messy.
Yeah, it wasn't cute at all.
No, it's not cute. I mean, it doesn't matter how on point your makeup is. It is not a cute experience when you're like things are imploding. And then on top of that, you're making all these changes when the world is going through a lot of turmoil as well. Right. So you really got hit hard.
Yeah. But the good news is, if we realize that it's just a life transition, then like you can go with the flow until the flow is a little more calm.
Yes. And we're all going to try and tap into the flow and dream a little bit more. And let's just say everyone needs to find a hobby. I feel like we definitely need to end this conversation talking about saying you got to get a hobby. Amazing. Agreed. Well, thank you, Nicole. I'm going to put all the links to all these amazing your event and your podcast below, so people can get in touch with you. And is it on social media that you like to connect to people? What's best for you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at NicoleRichards.co. And then LinkedIn is the same, NicoleRichards.co.
Amazing. So we'll keep in touch. We'll chat with you, and we'll let you know how our hobbies go.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for coming on, Nicole.
Thank you, Alana.
Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so, so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.